Hi, and welcome to today's mindset. I have Jason Berkowitz with me today. Jason, thank you for joining us. Just a little bit about you: huge SEO nerd, founder of the Break the Web, which I want to spend some time talking about. Amateur biohacker, excuse me, which I don't know what that means at all, so we'll have to get into that. Skydiver enthusiast and whiskey admirer. So I'm excited to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's kind of just jump into it. I wanted to talk about the SEO aspect of it because I think this is by the way, this is a topic we have never discussed. So this is kind of the first introduction to our listeners to hearing a little bit about SEO and why it's so important to solopreneurs or entrepreneurs who are small businesses really trying to get into whatever industry that they're breaking into. So tell us a little bit about SEO in its most basic form.
Yeah, in its most basic form, SEO is one of the many different marketing verticals in which the goal is to increase visibility, awareness in Google organic search results. Not the ads, not the different boxes that might appear, essentially just free listings in Google search in which you aim to match a specific page to a query and trying to match the intent of the query. Like, why is somebody looking for blue widgets? Are they looking to buy blue widgets or are they looking to make blue widgets? And that helps you form kind of the strategy there. But essentially, it's all about increasing awareness and visibility within organic search of Google, Bing, and other
All
search
the other
engines that may or may not
optimization,
exist.
right?
Yeah.
So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and kind of it from this is also again an exciting topic to me because before we got recording, I was explaining to you how we're actually here at SetSchedule. We're really starting to dive into SEO management and kind of clean up a lot of. I guess what we've been doing wrong over the last 7 years, because it seems like a very technical based industry SEO. Would that be fair to say?
I like to classify it actually as technical, data driven, and or plus creative. So there's aspects of SEO that might be technical, like technical SEO, coding, accessibility, speed, header tags. Those type of things might be a bit technical, but also might require a little bit of creativity in terms
Okay.
of content production, copywriting, even as simple as page titles and meta descriptions, in which the goal would be to get the click from search onto your
Right.
website. And that's where creativity comes into play, that click through rate.
So it sounds like two total opposites of the spectrum. You've got the technical aspect of it, and you've got the very creative kind of, the left versus the right brain. How do you find a balance in getting good at SEO?
Yeah, I think for the most part, understanding the technical side of things will be the first, probably the foundational aspects.
Okay.
When it comes to creativity, those are things that you can continuously test or even work with a copywriter on for those type of things. SEO should probably focus more so on the foundational aspects like on page SEO, what would be required there for even just content or page relevancy to allow the search engines to know what that specific page is about, what topic, who you serve, why you're better than some of the other competitors. And then off page SEO, which of course is trust building, digital PR, link building. But I would say technical would probably be first because you could always work with freelance. It's easier to work with freelancers on the creative side. I would say there's a lot of writers out there that are really great. But of course, you could develop creative skills as well by taking copywriting courses, content marketing courses.
Always personal growth going on with the marketing aspect, and it's obviously extremely important. Whether you're a salesman or you're a small business, and you being able to kind of grow your email marketing and your content for your website and all that is extremely important. So for someone who's maybe just thinking about it, because I mean, when we first started, it seems like a very scary beast. It seems like something that you're gonna have to spend hours upon hours upon hours just learning about, let alone taking action on. So, for someone who's maybe thinking about getting into SEO and is new, what are your recommendations as far as learning the technical side to kind of start the process of how do I get started on SEO?
Yeah, there's actually a really great resource that's available that we've even brought in internally called learningseo.io.
Okay.
An international SEO consultant named Aleda just took a roundup of all the different facets related to SEO and kind of organized it from skill level, from all the way to beginner, the jargon, the lingo that might be relevant, all the
Okay.
way to advanced, making sure that specific codes are set up properly from canonicals and all this and that. So learning SEO.io is actually a really great resource for getting started. And then after that, yeah, focusing on, I mean, from a broader standpoint, SEO is split into on-page SEO and off-page SEO.
Right.
So starting on the foundational aspects, trying to squeeze as much as possible from on-page SEO, again, tech SEO, content relevance, page relevance, optimizations, things that Google might be looking out for would be the great foundational aspects that would help with professional growth in the area of SEO.
That's awesome. And for me, I think what really helped out was what you just the on page versus off page, because I've gone into canonicals and indexing versus non-indexing and all that fun stuff. But I think for someone who is a little bit newer, breaking it down to understanding the differences between SEO when it comes to on page versus off page was really what made the difference for me to kind of get a little bit of a grasp of what's going on, because I mean there's so many tools out there, and that's something I do want to speak to about the tools that you'd recommend. You just recommended one, but what are some of the tools that someone can maybe start to look into to really start to optimize their websites and optimize a lot of the blogs? I'm sure hopefully a lot of people are writing.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the different aspect of SEO you're trying to help. Some of the popular tools are Ahrefs and SEMrush
Hmm.
when it comes to keyword research, understanding what demand is out there for a given topic, as well as link analysis, traffic analysis, competitive analysis. Those tools both work really, really great. When it comes to maybe even content optimization and on-page SEO, we like a tool called Content Harmony, which analyzes the top results and allows you to create a brief that's easily accessible for writers. Most writers in general are used to working with content briefs, but an SEO related brief allows them to integrate SEO into their already amazing content without having to worry about old school SEO, like throw the keyword in a million times. Content Harmony makes briefing and competitive analysis and understanding what topics and creating outlines. It's super seamless.
So you have been in SEO for how long?
I think it's slightly over a decade now. I mean, it is actually over a decade now. Geez. Um,
So,
yeah. And
how has SEO, how's the SEO game changed? Because I'm sure the Google algorithms and all the search engine optimization is the way that they run and kind of differentiate the good websites from the great websites. How has that changed over the last, let's say, even maybe even the last 2 years with COVID? Have you seen an impact on that?
from an SEO side of things, not much of an impact. I
Okay.
think Google's always testing, and sometimes they're doing a really good job with algorithm updates. Sometimes they do a really bad job with the type of quality. I think over the last 10 years, outside of execution strategy, things that we were doing 10 years ago, 2010, 2011 era, I don't even think we even think about nowadays. But nowadays, it's just the quality of the results have changed in a good way. People are getting better answers to the questions they have. Sometimes, again, Google's not always perfect. It is an
Right.
algorithm, it is a bot. But I think for the most part, also quality of search results has increased, which is, I guess, why people are kind of still trusting Google as the primary source.
I mean,
Not even kind of.
it's become the number one search engine. I remember the time when you guys have Yahoo and you were working with Yahoo, and now I don't even look at Yahoo. Everything goes through Google. So, I mean, is there any insight as to what maybe Google did that drove them to be the number one search engine compared to any other one?
That I may not be able to speak of.
Okay.
I know that in terms of the way their algorithm has advanced over the years, has always been a bit more advanced than maybe some of the other competitors, like Bing. Usually, when we're of course aiming for Google, like you just said, because of the monopoly they have. But as a byproduct, we're typically ranking in Bing as well. I mean, Bing's also, I guess, more fairly recent compared to Google, Yahoo. I don't know. I think it could be a bunch of different things: marketing, growth, type of search results, a catchy name that became like just Google it.
Yep.
So might be a
Fair enough.
variety of different things.
Fair enough. So on our platform, Jason, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, small businesses who are really starting to grow their business. And one reason they come to us is because they want to find other people to network. And people like such as yourself, they have questions about SEO. And by the way, what was your website? I don't think we've even mentioned your website, because you do have your own website that is number one when it comes to your own, and that's obviously something to mention as the SEO expert. Having your website as number one is obviously a tell for how successful you've been. But talk a little bit about yourself and your business with the SEO New York.
Yeah, so way back when, about a little over a decade, I was a personal trainer, and I was tired of relying on the leads from new gym memberships so I can grow my PT business. And I was like, okay, people have to be typing in personal trainer NYC. They have to be. And then I learned a bit about the acronym, and I learned that there is demand for people actively seeking out um, personal trainers in New York City, which of course led to the idea of inbound, having people come to you instead of trying to, approach people in the gym, which is
Right.
kind of weird and creepy sometimes. And then also relying on the new memberships that come in. And then when I was able to successfully rank that website, I was like, screw personal training. This was awesome. This was a fun puzzle, and paradigm shift took place, and figured I can do this for other people too. Created a profile on Elance, which is now Upwork,
Okay.
and started bringing in clients from there. Ranked a website first, which is now, it's still live and it's still killing it for New York SEO related terms, SEO services New York.org. But as we grew and I wanted to start delegating tasks and kind of move away from just solo freelancer, when it came to time to start building a brand, SEO Services New York is not the coolest name title. So after some whiskey and watching TV about how Kim Kardashian broke the web with some photos,
Oh, yep, yep.
I thought the idea of break the web and breaking the web and helping brands, get some visibility and be out there was really awesome. And that's how we've kind of transitioned into Break the Web, where we're now at breaktheweb.agency.
Wow. All good ideas start with a nice glass of whiskey.
Oh, of course.
What's your
Nothing bad ever happens.
yeah, what's your whiskey of choice? Are you
I like bourbon.
bourbon?
I'm a bourbon guy. Yeah. Knob Creek, and I got a gift from my wife this past weekend of a giant bottle of Woodford. When I say giant, it's massive. So should last another couple days probably.
Ah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, whiskey is definitely my go-to at the end of the night when you're just winding down. You've got a couple more hours of work to do, and you're like, I gotta get out of the headspace. So I appreciate that. So obviously you started as a small business, which means you've gone through just a lot of the struggles that a lot of all the small businesses need to go to, especially with SEO, because when you're competing with a lot of larger companies, you might not have as many resources as those companies do. So, what's some advice that you could give for someone who is a small business just starting to get into the space and might have a little bit of a smaller, tighter budget?
I would say follow the process and do what you can. Of course, it's going to be hard to compete with the big brands with multi-million dollar budgets. When it comes to keyword research, for example, there's going to be a lot of big wins that on paper may not look as sexy in terms of maybe monthly search volume,
Hmm.
but can be really, really fruitful, really long tail versions of a core idea are quick, easy wins. I mean, sometimes there might be keywords or queries or demand that might be low enough and no one's really going after it because the search volume just doesn't really attract your typical marketer, but also might have higher intent. So lower search volume might have better conversion value. Someone's more likely to convert if you do, of course, tackle a transactional related keyword.
Right.
I would say really hone in on keyword research, identify those low hanging opportunities that are probably there right in front of you, and then follow the rest of the SEO process.
So you talked about, I guess, the number of keyword searches versus what I learned, which was difficulty of the keyword search. Do you have maybe some numbers you can throw at the viewers and say, well, here's kind of a sweet spot of the keywords you might want to go after based on, the whatever key KPIs you might want to set to it, or variables. I mean, for us when we first started was how much are people searching it versus how difficult is it, and we kind of found this threshold, I guess, ratio of number of searches versus difficulty. So any advice on that?
Yeah, and I imagine when you first started, also you kind of took your what can be classified as existing authority in the space to see what you might be able to compete for,
Yeah.
and what you might not be able
I mean, you
to
got to
if the site is
stay
bring.
within your own industry, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I don't have a number range.
Okay.
I mean, of course, the more authoritative your website might appear using the various third party tools, and even then you might be able to go for more traditionally competitive type keywords. But if you're just starting out, focusing your effort on keywords that you're probably not going to rank for quite a while is just going to be wasted effort.
Fair enough.
I think there's a lot of value in longer tail keywords with low search volume. I mean, from our perspective, Break the Web ranks for a lot of, if you kind of do a reverse analysis of what we're ranking for, some are really good, but some maybe have like on paper 20 searches a month. But also analytics shows very, very different. Search console impressions and click-through rates show very, very different. So those numbers aren't 100% accurate. Plus the intent is super high. You know, I'd rather be ranking for a search term that gets quote unquote 30 searches a month. That's super transactional, super high buyer intent versus kind of a middle of the funnel type keyword that gets
Interesting.
2,000 searches per month.
So how does one kind of determine the level of intent? Because that seems pretty important from your perspective.
Yeah, there's various different tools nowadays that can help. Keyword Insights is one tool that can help with classifying search intent. SEMrush just launched it as well, but
Mm-hmm.
the free way is you can just go to Google search, type in your query, and see what's appearing on search. Is it articles? Is it product pages, collection pages, service pages, home pages? You know, use that as the guide of where on the funnel Google might classify the
Interesting.
search
I
intent.
like that.
So we might logically think that something might be a given intent, like, oh, I mean, when I'm making this search, I'm ready to spend money. But
Right.
unfortunately, at the end of the day, we're at the mercy of
Our
the big
audience,
beast.
right? Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's a interesting perspective. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. I like that. Cool.
Yeah.
So over the decade that you've been in the business, what kept you in it? I mean, again, this is not an easy business to be in, and there's a good amount of competition in it. But what gets you so excited about this, Jason?
I think it's a mix of different things. I think, first off, the emotional roller coaster that comes with being an entrepreneur is kind of addicting
Okay.
at certain points. It's a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and the highs are way better than the lows. So that's addicting in itself. And then
That keeps you going.
SEO, yeah. And SEO is kind of a puzzle and a challenge.
Mm.
And like following a framework that you helped create, you know, that's our break the web process that we have internally. And then seeing the results come in like on paper, you know, or if a team member posts on Slack and says like, whoa, look who's bringing in this amount of traffic for this new page that just launched. That's also really exciting. Then when we're able to share that with the clients, like our main points of contact, who are typically in-house marketing teams, they feel like they don't feel they become heroes of the company because they helped and collaborated with us. So that's pretty awesome there. A lot of our points of contact have even gotten promoted within their own business, within
Nice.
their own brand, or have gone on to promotions in other brands, and that's really cool. I'm happy to be a part of that. I find that
That's
really awesome.
it's always nice seeing not only your success but sharing the success of other team members and especially if they're third parties. I mean, if they're I guess a client of yours and they go and say, well, you know, I was able to get a promotion because of this. I think that's probably the best way that you know that you've actually been successful is seeing other people's success along with yours. That's cool.
Yeah, when
Um,
they get to put on a resume like I helped increase organic traffic by two thousand
uh-huh,
percent,
uh-huh. Yep,
it's kind of flashy.
yep. Those numbers are always I guess the key factors of what determines a success versus not is being able to say X percentage of raise from start to finish. That's exciting. Look, there's obviously got to be some risks that comes with this. I mean, it's not all rainbows and butterflies when it comes to SEO. What are some risks that people might need to be looking out for when they start their journey in SEO?
I think the biggest one is that there's no foolproof system and there's no guarantee on anything. You are at the mercy of a third party, even more so an algorithm.
Hmm.
And we know that algorithms and bots and crawlers and just technology doesn't always work when we need to. I mean, I have a smartwatch and this thing was just pissing me off yesterday. So when you're at the mercy of a third party to bring in traffic and awareness, that is very risky. And you're hoping that they're doing their job right.
That's I guess it's a something again you don't think too much about when you're you're not only are you it's technology based, and we all know when we need tech to work, it doesn't work, but now you're in a tech space with algorithms that are changing on a daily. I mean, how often do these algorithms change?
We tend to get word of the big ones when
Okay.
there's big fluctuations in the search engine result pages. Google says they release thousands a year. Um, I know November and December of 2021 was known to be some of the most volatile in terms of algorithm updates that they kept pushing out.
Hmm.
But there are probably at least a few hundred little micro ones and maybe 10 to 20 bigger known ones that really get tracked during algorithm update. There's a lot of sites that track algorithm updates and kind of give you a list on dates when things might have been pushed out. But yeah, there's a lot.
So, I mean, as a for I guess for your marketing agency, it's very important for you to be tracking the micros. But how important is it for a small business who's maybe just getting started to track those micros?
I mean, marketing is all data driven, right? So if you're analyzing the data and you see some weirdness at a certain date, cross-referencing that with a proposed
Got
or
it.
alleged algorithm update might give you a bit more sanity, a peace of mind, or might scare the hell out of you, depending
Right.
on whether it was positive or negative. But it just helps analyze the data.
Cool. Um, what's a good? I mean, and this might be a little bit too vague of a question. And again, you got to forgive me if my lack of SEO knowledge to your level is causing a silly question. But what are we looking for month over month? Are you tracking week over week numbers? Are you tracking month over month? And if so, what are you looking for? How do you know you're being successful with your SEO campaigns?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. Absolutely not a silly question. You know, SEO is not something that definitely shouldn't be tracked daily. I
Okay.
think it's hard because there might be a day where you don't really have much movements and then you keep coming back every day and that just leads to disappointment.
Yep. Yep.
Um, I think weekly and monthly are pretty good, or at least maybe twice a month, maybe. The problem is, like for example, it becomes an obsession when you start manually checking rankings or using a rank tracker and seeing,
Hmm.
okay, did I move up again today? Did I move up again today? And if you didn't, again, you're at the mercy of a third party, or it might even take time for some of the metrics that you've built, whether it's off page and some links, to kick in. It's probably better just to check back maybe once or twice a week max and see how things might have fluctuated. Daily, you're just gonna obsess over uh, the small little gritty details that are just gonna probably
You'll
cause
go
pain.
you'll go crazy. I think if you check the as often as I would love to check. And initially when I started checking, my SEO manager is like, back off, let me do it, because
It
you're
takes
looking at
time,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, he gave us. I mean, for us, it seems like a 3 month plan. Would that be fair to say? If you're really starting out fresh and you're really starting to kind of start this whole process, would a 3 month kind of campaign, I guess, or a metric system for you to start to check be fair?
Absolutely. We tell our clients that our goal is by 3 months, you see some noticeable improvements. Again, noticeable improvements can be very ambiguous because going from page 7 to page 3 is a big noticeable improvement. The closer you are to page 1, of course, number 1, the harder it is and more competitive it gets. 3 months, just to audit, analyze the foundational aspects, the tech SEO, work on the on page SEO, maybe even build a couple of links. Of course, keyword research, even just in the beginning of all of that.
Takes a while in of itself, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of big changes that can happen just from foundational work, like on-page SEO. So even just narrowing that in can produce some really good results. And if you are collaborative, that can be completed in under a month.
Interesting. What kind of metrics do you track on your side, Jason?
Yeah, the big important ones are non-branded organic search traffic. I'm trying to calculate as much as that with Search Console.
Hmm.
So increases of organic traffic for key target URLs that we have. That being the big one. Other ones are increases in impressions, increasing in clicks, again, overall as kind of secondary metrics there. And maybe for vanity's sake, some keywords. The thing is, with a given keyword, there might be dozens upon dozens of other semantically
Right.
relevant keywords that produce the same results. So we try not to obsess over keywords, but more so topics
So
overall.
how many keywords would you recommend someone, I guess, wanting to rank for?
I mean, that's also hard. What we aim to focus on is topics
Okay.
or ideas. We classify them
So
into
could you
buckets.
explain the difference between a topic versus a keyword?
Yeah, I mean, how big is a blue widget might have another semantically relevant keyword that will show the same results, like sizing of blue widgets. They will produce the exact same results,
Okay.
but they are two different keywords. And think about all the other variations in the English language of that exact same keyword or idea. I'm making a search because I want to satisfy a specific intent. I have a reason for going to Google, whether it's to get an answer to a question or to figure out where to spend my money on a blue widget. So, with that, there might be dozens of keywords that are all
I see.
relevant to the one topic or one idea. When you try to, you could sometimes you might be able to locate all of them, the ones that are on paper
Hmm.
and accessible, and track from there. There are some topics that maybe have 3 or 4 keywords, while others might have 25, 30
Right.
keywords in a
Okay.
given topic cluster, as we
Okay.
call them.
So by topic cluster, you're referring to a group of topics that you want to kind of, I guess, optimize for?
Group of keywords, we would
Group
say,
of
that
keywords.
might be
Okay.
associated with a given topic, and
Okay.
then you could cluster out ideas outside, like content hubs and uh, topic hubs as well.
Okay. So that makes a little bit more sense to me. I'm very familiar with Google Ads, and it's a topic we haven't spent time on. If we can maybe shift to that, because I think there's a lot of relevance between SEO and Google Ads, especially when it comes to digital marketing. And we'll get into that, and also want to get into social media a little bit. But um, what's the relevance, or what's I guess starting with the difference between the two would probably be a little bit of a easier find for or understanding for me. What's the difference between a what you do with your digital marketing versus what you're doing when you're trying to rank for keywords?
Yeah, essentially paid advertising, Google ads, social media ads, while not my expertise, essentially it's pay to play. Pay
Okay.
for that visibility, bidding
Versus
against other,
organic, which is what you're doing on your side as far as SEO.
yeah,
Okay.
versus organic, in which you're paying per click and you're bidding against other competitors in the space where you might have listings right at the top. Data shows that people are kind of skipping those listings because we hate ads anyways, versus the organic listings, which
Just
are all
shift through, just go through
algorithm
all the
based.
top six ones, right?
Yeah, yeah. Versus the organic listings, which are all algorithmic based.
Okay. Okay. So, what's the relevance between the clusters that you mentioned earlier versus someone who might be like myself, who might be familiar with, the Google, the keywords, the grouping, the what is there similarities between the two? Am I thinking about
Yeah,
them the same?
yeah. I mean, you could absolutely. I think it comes down to, even with keyword groupings, it might come down to the way you might organize and interpret information as well. From a paid advertising standpoint, I think groupings and ad groups can be part of an organizational tool as well as a data driven tool. I know some people like single keyword ad groups, other people like big, lengthy keyword groups. That would be dependent on the strategy there. And then, yeah, very similarly, for example, if you want to target paid ads, blue widgets, and all the different keywords associated with it, you can technically cluster them
Plus
in
them
the
in.
same way as you would with SEO.
Interesting. It's again, it's a world that I think I've just gotten into in the last maybe 6 months, and the amount of information that's out there, it's really mind-boggling how much time you can spend in SEO and still learn. I mean, obviously, a lot of industries are this way, but for me, I think this was a kind of an eye-awakening, I guess, experience, because it's just going into it so green. There's just so much going on.
Yeah. I mean, everyone should always be learning in any field, right?
Yep.
You don't always know it all. So, I
Yep.
mean, I try to learn something new every day. Our team members, we have a kind of like education Fridays where everyone's tasked and named to go learn something new in their respective role.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think the personal development is just as important as professional development, if not more impactful, when you get to a certain level of experience in your profession. Um, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on SEO in the social media space? I mean, this is something for me that I can't quite grasp. I understand the relevance, but it seems so far fetched to me that people are. I mean that the algorithms are really looking for the content that you're putting out there in social media, and how that kind of ranks with, you know. Just your general searches on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram and TikTok. Um, Let's start there. I have so much on this topic that I would love to speak to you about, but let's
Yeah,
start there.
I don't think your thoughts are that far fetched. It's actually, as we know, the reality, in that there's no direct correlation between SEO and social media.
Okay.
And by direct means that increasing your engagement on social media, your posts, whatever that is, that'll help with SEO. The indirect benefit is that if somebody sees your post on social, they may link back from their blog to yours, and then that would in turn help SEO. So kind of more of an indirect passageway, but it has been proven many times over that social signals don't have any value really in
Ah,
terms of SEO, especially because those can be really easily manipulated, social signals.
so what you're saying is use your social media to direct, your audience base to your primary platform.
Yeah, I mean, use social media as another marketing vertical, just as SEO would be email marketing, paid advertising might be. If you want to hand out brochures and flyers, that might be another marketing vertical. That's how we would recommend treating social media. We don't really have much involvement with social media, but we know that there is no correlation, and use it as you would with any general marketing campaign. Nail down SEO, nail down social media, nail down email.
Interesting. Cool. So that seems like it's the relevance to that is really just marketing. I mean, getting yourself out there and just getting more eyeballs onto your platform.
Well, I mean, if you again tying back into third parties that are going to be the source of traffic and maybe sales, whether it's Google or Facebook and Instagram, try not to put all of your eggs in one basket
Mm-hmm.
allows you to have a great marketing strategy. So if Google went down for 12 minutes, which they did a couple of years ago, and e-commerce sites lost billions, you have Facebook and Instagram to at least try to continue to bring
Supplement.
in sales versus throwing them all in one revenue stream.
Awesome. Got it. Fair enough. You got the good, the bad, and ugly in every industry, and we talked a little bit about the difficulties of it. What are some bad practices that you've seen newer, maybe newer team members, not team members, we don't want to call out our team, right? But newer people who've come into this practice start to make that you can maybe recommend people learn from those mistakes?
Yeah, well, first off, our team members are amazing, and we
Yes,
never do anything
always,
bad.
always.
Nowadays, I don't necessarily think there's bad practices, just the way Google's algorithms have evolved, where you don't really get penalized as much as you would get demoted, or you're just wasting time and nothing will happen.
Hmm.
There's a lot of, I mean, just like any other industry, there's a lot of great marketers, less SEO people. They're great at marketing courses and shiny objects and things that are out there. Yeah, I would say there's nothing. I mean, old school, there's a lot of SEO things we used to do back in the day that would not be applicable and probably just a waste of time, like blog comments, social bookmarking, mass link building softwares where you click a button and walk away for 5 minutes, you come back, you have 1,000 links from forum sites and guest posts and social media bookmarking sites. So those were harmful and bad, especially because you can get unnatural link penalties
Okay.
nowadays. And also even I guess bad might be actually just not focusing on the user and focusing about SEO, and that typically just creates bad content.
So what do you
For
mean?
example,
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Thank you. I was gonna ask you what you meant by that in as far as not talking to your audience and talking to SEO.
yeah, I mean, back in the day, the philosophy was to have a certain keyword ratio where your keyword might fit in the overall content. So if you have 1,000 words and you want to aim for maybe a 5% keyword ratio, then you got to have it, of course, 5 times. The tides have shifted. We tend to, and that's why we do, for example, with Content Harmony, content briefs that we sometimes deliver to clients that have in-house writing teams,
Okay.
in which they get to know what we're looking for from an SEO standpoint in terms of topics to cover, maybe some words to include that wouldn't traditionally be included, a competitive analysis, kind of angles that might be worthy based on what Google classifies as the proper search intent. And then they can go ahead and take our brief, kind of read it, go through it, maybe reference back to it from an SEO standpoint, and write really amazing content that flows, that's engaging, that looks natural, versus throwing in blue widgets 500 times in a
And
2,500 word article.
so this is a topic that we actually speak a lot about in our team is how many times does the word you're trying to necessarily rank for, how many times should that be in your article versus, um, you know, am I just writing the article for the topic, for the keyword, or am I writing the article to educate? And I think we've come on to the idea that we want to write agnostic information that's just teaching people something that they wouldn't have learned otherwise. Would you consider that best practice for blogs or article writing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it's, thinking from the user's perspective, if it, like, I mean, like recipes, for example, I'm sure you've Googled
Of
recipes
course.
online and there's just blocks and blocks of text before you figure out, like, oh, my grandmother used to make the best chicken parmesan. And then since then, I learned how to develop this recipe. It's just nonsense. It's a really poor user experience. And I think just getting into nitty gritty data, while of course being informative and utilizing keywords naturally as it would appear, is probably the right way to go. Like you've mentioned, informing the user, providing a good user experience while also integrating SEO data. Like it's obvious that this word should probably be included in the content for relevance purposes. And yeah, trying to find a natural way to include it.
Got it. So how important is writing articles and creating blogs, as far as SEO optimization?
It's really good to bring in top of the funnel awareness. And if your audience might be asking a question, you can aim to navigate them down to the funnel. It also helps create site wide relevance. So if you keep writing on a specific topic,
Hmm.
Google will see that. And of course, okay, this website is about, I hate to keep using it because it's so traditional, blue widgets. If the site is
We could call it
about
green
blue
widgets if
widgets,
it makes it a little bit better for you, more entertaining.
like maroon widgets.
Maroon.
So
There you
if
go.
the site is about maroon widgets and you keep writing content about maroon widgets, then yeah, Google's gonna notice that relevance. Okay, and it makes you more authoritative on the given topic
Hmm.
because you keep writing about it. But again, understanding what the outcome is going to be is really important. A lot of people say, "Oh, we've learned that we just need to push out more and more content." And what's your overall goal? To get more sales. Now, again, keep in mind, content, top of the funnel, informational is not going to necessarily translate to sales,
Right.
and will probably have a low conversion rate. So, especially like for example, we sometimes work with local businesses and they want to push content, but again, if you're bringing in national traffic, you're not going to get more feet in the door. You may help create some brand recognition, maybe get some investor money, but in terms of somebody typing in a top of the funnel informational query like how to turn a maroon widget green, then no one's ready to spend money necessarily. And if you are local, no one's going to come in.
um, it's so backlinking, where does that come into play? Because again, for us, blogs and articles are extremely important. And quite frankly, Jason, I think at this point, I'm really just picking your brain from a lot of the major issues that I think the friction points that we've here at SetSchedule have been dealing with. Because I think there's so much back and forth. It's a lot of this. I don't want to say subjective. There obviously the algorithms are the algorithms, and you got to meet their conditions. But there seems to be so many different, I guess, opinions about best practices. What is your best practice about backlinking and how that works?
Yeah, I mean, we consider it digital PR outreach. Our goal is to provide value to other websites as well. However, it might be possible with making sure that we have resources, information, statistics, data, whatever it is that might be useful to another publication and their reader. It's about spreading the word, essentially. I think just understanding, and you can get really creative on how you go about backlinking and outreach, but understanding the purpose and how it comes into play is going to be key. Like we know on-page SEO is used to signal relevance of a
Hmm.
topic, but every website can be relevant on a given topic. They say, "Oh, write better content," but that's also subjective. Who determines whether content's
It's
better than
better or not,
another?
right?
That's where relevance plus off-page SEO trust comes in. If you have more relevant websites that they themselves are getting organic traffic from Google, which tells us that Google likes them, that'll help pass trust. So relevance and trust equals topic authority, essentially. Um, I mean,
So
there's a
I'm sorry
stigma
to
behind
interrupt you.
backlinking. Yeah,
You've
yeah, yeah.
mentioned this word authority a couple of times, and when you talk about authority, what is it that you're referring to when you talk about topic authority? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, so Google actually has a filter called EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. There's
Eat.
a lot of much greater SEOs than me who have done a much better job explaining this, but pretty much in industries. and certain niches that might be considered what's called YMYL, your money, your life, like
Okay.
medical, finance, those type of things. Google is looking at certain EAT factors. So the expertise behind the content. Why is this person qualified or an expert on the subject? Do they have the
Okay.
degrees, the backing, the references, the authority on the subject? Are they truly recognized as an authority? Is the content itself an authority? Are they linking to sources of information that back it up? And, again, trustworthy sources of information, and then T being the trust aspect, which we consider linking.
So is that the metric? Is that like our end goal? Is to be on that like authoritative list of whatever industry we're in? Is that kind of, we've got our steps and we're doing what X, Y, and Z to get to that metric.
I mean, when I say authority, also, I'm tying it in biasly to SEO.
Yeah.
So when you keep appearing for a given topic or a given industry, Google classifies you as an authority.
Okay.
While your peers might think you suck, but that's when I'm referencing authority is more so in the eyes of Google. If you're getting
Right.
a lot of traffic and really honed in on maybe a topic bucket, a topic cluster, or a hub of surrounding topics, you're probably considered an authority or one of the many authorities in a given area. So making sure that the content, the page, explains who's writing the content, why they're qualified. Again, this is big in finance and and medicine and health. Why is the author an authority in the space? What credentials do they have? And that's from the expertise standpoint. And then the authority, are they uh, bringing up data to back what they say? That's the big ones there. And then again, link building. Authority, just SEO authority,
Yeah,
Google
I think that
traffic.
was a fair clarification. For
Yeah.
for me, the authority I think is kind of maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong. There's some synergy and kind of parallel between authority and expertise. If Google can track you as an
Yeah.
expert in that industry, I think that for me is kind of, because the word authority, I guess you think about, doesn't matter. But expertise for me is kind of something that I think allowed me to kind of better understand what we're referring to when we say SEO authority.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Again, it's all culmination of everything.
Awesome. So I'm totally new into SEO. I've been in business for a year, and now I really want to start to build, start to put in resources into SEO. Um, how do I get started, and what's kind of like a 3 month or a 6 month, I guess, plan that you can help someone put together on a very basic level to get them going?
Yeah, I think first, I mean, my first recommendation, if you are a business owner and you're kind of a small shop, figure out a way to delegate.
Okay.
Nothing's more stressful than putting another hat on your head. And
Fair enough.
STO is one of those that'll kill you. And if you do have the budget to even bring in a freelancer, someone small, or someone maybe even just straight out of college who's hungry to even just implement some marketing strategies, the starting point would be keyword research.
Okay.
Understanding what people are typing in, understanding what type of demand is out there for your industry, for your products, your services, pretty much sets the precedence for the entire SEO strategy and campaign. That's what you're working towards. So understanding what's available, what's realistic and not too competitive would be the first thing, whether a business owner, freelancer, agency would typically do.
That's awesome. And then from there, you're obviously building out your on page and off page kind of parallel with each other. You're building that up as far as optimization goes. Would that be fair?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean each has their own sub facets, I
Of
guess.
course.
We got on page, we got technical SEO, content auditing. Seeing our is crappy content even getting traffic? Is it serving a purpose? Probably nix it. You know, yeah, and more on page SEO aspects like page speed.
Yeah, that was something else that I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
a lot of people, and so how does page speed come into effect with SEO optimization?
Yeah, I mean, it's known that it has a an effect with SEO. The amount it has an effect right now is actually quite debatable,
Okay.
in which Google released an algorithm over the last couple of years called Core Web Vitals, which is supposed to have a big impact on search. The problem is that when they launched Core Web Vitals and making mobile first indexing, there's still a lot of crappy sites that load really really slow. So I think there still is an impact, but it might be tied into user experience, might be tied into engagement rate, and the rate at which somebody's engaging the content, maybe keep clicking through the website. I think just from a traffic maintenance standpoint, if you want to maintain the traffic that's coming in, having
Mm-hmm.
page speed uh, and increasing page speed probably will increase conversions. I get frustrated when a site takes more than 2 or 3 seconds to load, and I'm
Yep.
an impatient New Yorker, but you know,
We're
I get
always running.
frustrated,
Yeah, I was.
especially if I'm on Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the future of SEO and marketing look like? I mean, I'm sure things are going to continue to evolve and grow as SEOs change and algorithms change. But how do you see the future of SEO evolving?
Right now, I think it's going to relatively remain the same. I mean,
Okay.
Google's always changing, SEO strategies are always changing, but when you have an idea on what many of the search engines are aiming for, which is correlating great pages, great quality pages to search demand and search intent, then that's not going to change much. We do know that Google is trying to keep as much traffic on Google as much as possible, which is going to affect SEO, of course, by feature snippets, by just answering questions right there in the search results, has already been known to decrease click through rate from search to a website. That may only get greater depending on user response. If people are getting annoyed by it and they don't want to, or as they people might continue to maybe lose trust in Google as a source of information, they may use Google and request that Google goes back to just being the middleman between great information and the user.
Interesting. Um, so I I guess I'm still not totally understanding how that works exactly. Um, and I guess it's just can you simplify that a little bit? I mean, for me, as
Oh,
I'm still not understanding how the whole structure of that is kind of put together with SEO.
oh, which part in particular would you like me to
Um,
elaborate on?
yeah, I guess for me, when it comes to the search,
The different features that might appear in Google that keeps people on Google.
yeah,
Is that
yeah, to an extent. So okay, so you look up. We went to the maroon. We went to the maroon color, right? So you look that up, and you've got 4 or 5 different pages. You got your ads at the top, and then you've got your top four. How does Google determine one versus two versus three? I mean, it seems like there's such a small margin between those top 3 pages
in terms of organic
in terms of
listings?
organic search. Yeah, how am I determined if I'm at the top of page one versus the bottom of page one?
Are you asking how do you see where you are or what's required to get
What
there?
what's required to get there?
Good on page SEO and good off page SEO. I mean, at a certain point, if you're actively competing for a given topic for with one of your competitors who you might have similar metrics with, then it comes down to just trying to be as fine tuned as possible with the relevance of the page and trying to get as much great links as possible. And then it becomes a foot race. And even nowadays, number one, number two aren't all that is cracked up to be. Sometimes traffic, people are so used to skipping the ads that they may even skip the number one result anyways by accident. So I think just being visible and increasing traffic and awareness is good. And sometimes number one, number two, number three may not even be realistic if you have these huge conglomerate brands like in the e-com space, Amazon. You might be able to outrank Amazon, but there's also a good chance that they're probably just going to stay there because of their authority online.
Interesting.
So
I mean,
yeah, it's better on page SEO strategy.
and I guess I think the reason that I asked that is really, I mean, us being in having had been in the real estate sector, you've got so many different platforms that are trying to be number one when it comes to just searching to buy a property. If I go to buy a property in Dallas, Texas, you've got your Redfin, you've got your Zillow, you've got your Homes.com and Realtor.com and RealtyTrack, and they're all trying to be number one. And I guess I'm constantly seeing that shift in paradigm from number one moving to number three and number two moving to number one. I mean, it
And it's going to
just
happen.
seems, yeah, it just seems so
Google's
so.
A/B testing the results. They're always A/B testing the results. So that's something to keep in mind. You're going to see dancing. You're going to see shifts.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Cool, Jason. Any final words for our viewers and listeners who are because we gave them a lot of information today. I mean, I think we touched a very large variety of topics, and we really did break it down in a very simple form, and I appreciate that. So thank you. But any advice that you can give, like final words that you can give someone who's right on the edge of, hey, I'm gonna get into SEO, and still has some fears about. Now that we talked about fears, still has some fears about getting going with SEO.
Yeah, I think follow a proven framework. While SEO is no guarantee, there's frameworks and guidelines and phases, and if you follow that efficiently and you're realistic about your targeting, you're going to have success. It's no secret how SEO works. LearningSEO.io is a great resource of free information. It's just a giant collection of organized articles on various different websites talking about a given topic. So, just understanding what the outcome is and managing your expectations is probably the biggest thing I can give.
That's awesome. That's awesome advice. Well, Jason, thanks again for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation, and kudos to you for being in the game for as long as you've been, and you've been as successful as you have. And it goes to speak volumes about obviously your expertise in this industry. So thanks for taking the time, and hopefully we'll see you again on a future podcast with us.
Absolutely. I appreciate it again. Thank you so much for having me, Daniel.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.